Hello and welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute-a-day podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse, recorded here in the dining room of the Bible Bistro, located in Sharonville, Ohio. Hey there, friend. Welcome back to Daily Dose Radio here in the Bible Bistro. This is your 5-minute-a-day, 5-day-a-week, studying the Psalms verse by verse podcast here in the Bible Bistro. Now, you're not going to find that anywhere else on the interwebs. Just right here. So come on in here, let that screen door slam shut behind you. Here in the northern hemisphere, it is summertime. Now I know in the southern hemisphere it's wintertime down there, but here in the north we have summertime, and it reminds me of when I was a boy and I would go visit my grandmother, and she lived on a farm in Kentucky, and when we walked into her house, she had a screen door on the back door of her house, which is where everybody went in and out of. The front door you couldn't get in and out of, but the back door you could. And you'd open that screen door up and it would creak and groan as it opened, and then there was that spring on the inside would pull it shut and slam it. And so every time you'd walk in, you'd hear this bang, So I'm asking you to remind me of that. Come in here, open that screen door up, sit down at the table. I've got some goodies for you today here in Psalm 93. We're going to look at verse 3 today, but let's review before we read verse 3. So the Lord reigns. Okay, that's number one. Number one thing that we learn, the Lord reigns. Number two thing, He is clothed with majesty, and that majesty is His strength. So He's in charge, and He has the strength to be in charge. He has established the world. So not only is He reigning as sovereign, not only is He clothed with majesty, but He is also the creator. So the world is established, it cannot be moved. So He created it, and it's not some, junky thing that might fall apart on any moment that we have to worry about it. Oh my goodness, things are changing and the world's falling to pieces. Nope. God has made it, established it, it cannot be moved. So 1, He reigns. 2, He has majesty. 3, He is the creator of the world. 4, He has a throne, so He has the authority over all things that He has created. And He is eternal. So 5 things right there that we have about the Lord in this psalm. Now today we're going to look at something else. We're going to move our eyes from the throne, and we're going to look at something else. So, if you look there at verse 3, let me read that for us. The floods have lifted up, O Lord, the floods have lifted up their voice. The floods lift up their waves. All right, so now we look from the throne to the flood and their waves. And their waves are a voice, and that voice is saying what? Well, we'll have to talk about that. There's a lot of indication in the scripture that what we're talking about is the flood of humanity. They are lifting up their waves, their voices, and they're doing something. In Psalm 65:7, I think really we have the key to it there. So let me turn over there in my Bible. Let me read that for us. In Psalm 65:7, we have which stills the tongue, or which stills the noise of the seas, the noise of their waves, and the tumult of the people. So you notice that the noise of the waves and the tumult of the people and the noise of the seas, those are parallels. So the tumult of the people is the noise of the sea. So the tumult is the noise and the people is the sea. So when we come here and we have the floods have lifted up their voice, well, we assume then, I'm assuming, and I hope that this helps us with this particular verse, that we're talking about the noise of men as they clamor against God. It's the tumult of the people. Jude, in his little epistle in the New Testament, talks about, in verse 13, the raging waves of the sea. Now he's talking about these guys that have entered into the church. They're filthy dreamers and so forth, and he's comparing them to lots of things. So he compares them to the spots, the gross spots, the clouds without water, the twice dead trees, Then in 13 he says, the raging waves of the sea foaming out their own shame. So now we have these apostates who are compared to the waves of the sea foaming out their own shame. So you imagine the waves crashing against the rocks and all that nasty foam coming up off of that. And then we have in Revelation chapter 13, this is the picture of the beast that's rising up out of the sea. So with all of this as a background, now we come to this passage, and they stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads, 10 horns, upon his horns 10 crowns, upon his heads the name of blasphemy. So this beast rising up out of the sea is coming up out of the generation of men. So when we have here, the floods have lifted up, O Lord, the floods have lifted up their voice, not sure that's a good thing. No, as a matter of fact, I think that's not a good thing. And so the psalmist here is telling us that while we are praising these 5 things that we've already established, that God is sovereign, He's clothed with majesty, He's established the world, that is, He's the creator. He has authority because His throne is established of old, and He's eternal. We turn now to look to the floods, which are coming and going, the waves are beating, but what do? They're lifting up their voice and lifting up their waves and foaming out their shame, perhaps, because they've not submitted themselves to this God. So if you'll join me tomorrow, we're going to look at verse 4, and we're going to find out what the Lord has to say about verse 3. So join me then here on Daily Dose Radio. Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. For more fresh and delicious Bible studies, podcasts, books, and more, check out the Bible Bistro online and on YouTube. Join me again next time for Daily Dose Radio.